Hey everybody, Jay Schlansky here from the Fifth Trooper Network. I just want to take a moment to thank you for checking out this show. Did you know that over at thefifthtrooper.com we have tons of other content, including blogs, other podcasts, all kinds of stuff. In addition, if you want access to exclusive content, you can join us on patreon.com/thefifthtrooper and join at any level and you'll get access to exclusive blog articles, access to our private Discord, and much more. So please check us out, and thank you so much for all your support.
Welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels, a Star Wars Legion podcast bringing you the latest news, general perspective, and competitive discussion.
Hello and welcome back to the Notorious Scoundrels podcast. I'm Kyle. I'm here with Mike and Tim. What's up, gentlemen?
Hey. Back again.
We're back. Every week.
Every three.
Every three for Tim. Yeah. Here to bring you the biggest Legion news / discussion. This week, we're actually going to riff a little bit about something that was discussed on one of our the other podcasts on the network, the Fifth Trooper podcast, which of course is also on the Fifth Trooper network, as we are, talked about whether we need a Legion 2.0 last week. And their core point is we need Legion 2.0. So the title of this episode is going to be We Don't Need Legion 2.0. I don't know if necessarily that's the conclusion that we're pushing here, but it is a fun we're going to do a little bit of a counter argument here, I think. So strap in. Yeah,
we're going deep. We heard you, Jay and Tim, and we're here to defend the line. We will hold it.
I guess there's also, I know there's been some debate about what we should call where Legion is currently. Like, are we in? Is this like Legion 1.5? What did Legion 1.0 stop when, like, pre-CRB? Like, what do you, let's start there. What do you guys think about that? I know this is probably semantics, but
I think the semantics are important, actually, of this, just because I'm actually, sorry, I'm trying to pull up the core rulebook right now and see. So technically, the core rulebook, it looks like, continued the versioning from the original RRG, which was done by FFG and stuff. Yep. We're technically in version 2.5.4.
Okay. So officially we're in Legion 2.5, basically.
2.5.4.
Yeah.
So I think the contention there is mainly that there's not a real well-drawn line in the sand as to, like, the difference between Legion 1.0 and 2.0.
Yep.
Whatever those were, I would have to go and look in the RRG or whatever. I'm sure I've got like 40 of them on my hard drive, but
yeah,
like, I think it's like, if you kind of go back in your memory of the game, the closest thing I think that we've had to a 2.0 in Legion is probably when Republic and Separatist was released, frankly. It's not like a hard rules change, but that's the most the game, I think, has ever changed at one time.
Yeah, to me, when I think of 2.0, I think of, like, actual fundamental changes to how the core gameplay works. The Clone Wars faction releases obviously introduced some new mechanics and such, but generally speaking, those mechanics just kind of built on the foundation that was already there. And I would say we're, like, generally consistent with the identity that the game had established up to that point. So, well, I agree with you that they definitely, like, changed the game significantly. I would say that they kind of just, like, pushed it further along the trajectory it was on already, if that makes sense.
I agree with that.
Whereas when I think of, like, a new version, we can say 2.0, 3.0, whatever. I think of something that actually like fundamentally changes how you approach the game and how you think of the core identity of the game, rather than something that just builds on what's there already.
I agree, and I guess this is kind of where I'm coming from, in that like I don't think that's happened. Pretty much, I mean, I think there's been some tweaks for sure over the game's lifetime, but for the most part, the game that we have now, the game that we know and love, I might reinforce, underline, and underscore, put an exclamation point at the end.
Yep.
It's still the same game that we had on the release of this game for the most part.
Yeah. I
Like,
mean, if that rule book said like 1.5.4, I think we'd all pretty much agree that that's pretty accurate assessment of where we are. Like I don't think any of us feel like we've hit a 2.0, but there have been some pretty seismic shifts throughout, the years. And a couple of them would like constitute like, that point one, that point two, or that point three change. Which all sort of add up. And I think, around that point five, like 1.5 is kind of where I think the game's at.
so just as sorry, I've been digging through, as we're having this conversation, I've been digging through RRGs
Okay.
and trying to find ones with like version numbers and stuff. So I have version 2.0.2.
Okay.
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 It was effective 11/8/21. The new rules entries that are in there appear to be the clone trooper keyword, low profile, and setup. And this might have been
2021.
that's what it says. This is the and to be
That
clear,
seems
where I'm
late
getting
for
from
Clone
this,
Trooper.
this is the RRG that is still on the FFG website.
Well, that would have been the one that changed clones from unlimited tokens to one token, right?
That's
Yep.
likely. I think based on this, like, this doesn't seem like a full update to Clone Trooper and stuff.
Yeah.
It just says new rules entries, page 24, Clone Trooper. It's likely just an edit to say, hey, clones, screw off. Take
Yeah,
your Rex stars and go home.
And the end of 2021 was the last big like balance update that actually had a significant amount of hard errata and stuff in it. That was the big like Empire buff balance update, where Vader got a lot of those changes. Empire got a lot of points reductions and stuff. And then Republic, that was the change to the clone trooper keyword that allowed you to only share one token. So
yeah, and the only thing that is highlighted in blue here under Clone Trooper is the one that specifies that it's one, as opposed to all the other entries under Clone Trooper are black, suggesting this was an edit. So it's entirely possible that 2.0 actually kind of tracks with my suggestion that it was around the Clone Trooper or Droid Trooper release, because that edit came in like pretty quickly thereafter. I feel like
it was at least a year.
a year.
Yeah.
Oh man. All right.
Yeah. In fact, the release for clones and droids was in late 2019.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess we were like,
some of the key stuff like arcs didn't hit until early 2020, and then there was the pandemic, so there was that whole time warp situation where like a significant portion of Legion tournaments were not in person.
Yeah.
But nonetheless enough to establish that clones were super good and shouldn't be able to share a bunch of tokens.
Well, and the pre-release nerf.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
arcs
arcs were nerfed before they actually got
arcs,
released.
yeah, because they were spoiled really early.
Yeah.
And then
I think they were like official. They were released. They just weren't.
Yeah.
They were released like right at the start of the pandemic, so people just didn't get to play with them basically.
No, I want to check a date on that.
I thought it was March or April of 2020, but
all right. Maybe, I don't know.
That's my recollection.
I have a similar recollection, Tim. Because I was
Okay.
playing Rex. No, I have a similar recollection in supporting your
Oh,
stance.
okay.
To be clear, I was like, man, these got nerfed before I even like got to take them out of the box type situation. But
August 28th of 2020.
Okay, so it was till 2020. I wonder when the errata to remove critical from the DC-15 was. I think that was
Wasn't-
November of 2020 because the FFG updates were typically once a year in November or December.
Errata reference is right here. I might be able to tell you.
This is the Legion history lesson, folks.
Yeah.
Did not necessarily anticipate this going this direction.
I
But
didn't either. This was we said we were gonna riff it. This isn't what I had in mind, but I'm okay with it.
we know how much you rules junkies appreciate getting into semantics like version numbers. So
So this has got the same, the errata reference is effective 11/8/2021, but it doesn't actually highlight what the changes in this errata were, but I feel like the critical one keyword was removed in the same update as the clone token sharing thing was.
It was
Yeah.
that same update, or I think it might even been
it was the
tokens
standby sharing
before.
one.
It was the standby sharing one. Okay. Then I don't know what date.
Yeah, the first clone token nerf was
Yeah.
to remove standbys from clone tokens.
And then we were
That
like,
was-
oh, we can share 10 name tokens. We don't need standbys anyways. We'll shoot them before they get to us.
Yeah. That was the late 2020 update,
Okay.
which I think was after, not long after, but after ARCs came out. And that one also included the removal of critical from the DC-15.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. That one I think was much closer to whenever that unit released, for sure.
But again, it was like mid-pandemic, so other than, Invader, people didn't really get to use them before that happened. So
Yeah.
now there was like 2 Invader seasons in there where they just crushed it.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Um, So there was certainly like, whether it was on the table data or not, there was certainly enough public data to make those changes that were obviously warranted. So, but that's neither here nor there. I guess my broader point is, regardless of what version number we may technically be on, when I hear 2.0, I think of like something that actually changes what the game is attempting to be. And I don't think we've hit that yet. I think 1.5, to your point, Tim, is an appropriate thing, and that like the CRB introduced a lot of changes that kind of like watered down the skill expression identity of Legion. But I don't think it like fundamentally changed it. If that makes sense. So when people say like we need a 2.0, when I hear that, I think like we need a different version of Legion, or like rather than like building on what Legion is already.
Or just like getting like a balance update, right? Like,
Yeah, a balance update is not 2.0.
Yeah, it's not even close, right? It's like
Right.
these are like patch notes to like
Right.
they're like introducing hot fixes into the game,
But balance updates are that 0.01 change, not the
right.
0.1 change.
Yeah. And really they're kind of just dials that they're turning at that point, right? They're just turning points up or down, and maybe they're adding a keyword there or removing a keyword over here that's like on a unit, but they're generally not like changing how a keyword works or fundamentally changing how a unit works. I mean, like look at the edit to like Dark Troopers, right? They changed some keywords there, but it was like Dark Troopers are still the same unit. You just can't like, do wonky shit like Guardian in them, like,
Right.
And so it's just like, it's just fixing weird existing rules interactions instead of creating a whole host of new ones.
Yeah, in theory, that stuff should be like tightening things up, basically. Plugging holes, filling cracks, tightening things up.
Unless you're editing overrun, and then we're just
And then you're
just
creating
making
more
new
cracks.
holes.
Yeah.
Oopsies.
Yeah, hopefully when you're filling holes, you don't make more, but obviously that's not always what happens. Anyway, so one of the criticisms that I have heard of Legion recently is that it feels stale. I'm not sure that I disagree with that exactly, or at least that sentiment. I think Legion is still very fun. So stale to me means that it doesn't feel like I don't know. To me, it's still fun. It is less fun than I feel like it used to be. Um, whether that is due to lack of change or not, I think is debatable. I will say there's two data points I want to talk about related to this criticism before we like just to frame this discussion a little bit. The first is release pace. There have been, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think the only releases we've had since Adepticon last year, since we're coming up on Adepticon and they did a bunch of reveals, are Ewoks, Geos, Cody, and Ahsoka. Is that right?
Sounds right.
Sorry, I'm seeing if I can find the chart that's posted in Discord.
Okay.
Because this is a thing that frequently comes up.
It is.
And somebody has a chart of like what was released when, and doesn't seem to be pinned. Jordan, why is it not pinned, my man? It's supposed to be pinned. Come on, dude.
Anyway, I think that's right. Obviously, before Adepticon, we will also get Inquisitors, which means that each faction will have at least got one thing over the course of a year, which is good, but it's not like remotely close to, you know, for the first really like 4 years of Legion, it was a release every month, if not like 2 releases every month. And I'm not saying should have to go back to that either. I guess my point is more symptomatic of like if Legion feels stale, I think it's worth highlighting the fact that we just haven't had that many releases compared to other previous time periods. The second is related, and it's that we have not had a neutral upgrade card, a new one, since the Shadow Collective release, which was
I think that one I can get on board with. That to me, I think I definitely, it seems to me that like either a decision was made somewhere along the line from the like swap from FFG to AMG to be like, like the generic stuff is covered. You know, like we don't need to make new neutral. I don't know. That seems like a very clear design choice that they've taken since that swap has happened. I actually I do empathize with that kind of take. Like you do have to kind of make some leaps to like come up with new neutral upgrades that do stuff. And I would also like to point out that the large majority of neutral upgrades that exist in this game aren't any good.
I think that's probably a lower population than you'd think. There are definitely a lot of, particularly like gear slot, but there are quite a few neutral upgrades that people just don't take. But there's a lot of ones that like are extremely useful and interesting and change how things function. And we've kind of taken for granted those existing because they've been part of the game for so long. But neutral upgrades are like foundational to creating variety and interest, frankly, in builds. And I know that when we first, I don't know if they ever like specifically said anything, but people kind of noticed that there weren't like neutral upgrades with the new stuff. And I think the original conclusion was, okay, well, if they want to just move to like an upgrade pack model instead of just putting neutral upgrade cards in every new release, like that's fine. Like you get a silly amount of neutral upgrades and like who needs that many cards really? And I definitely get that. But I think that was based on an assumption. And I hadn't actually said like we're gonna do a neutral upgrade card pack.
That we're gonna get upgrade card pack 3 sometime in the near future.
Right, because it has been almost 2 years since we've had a new neutral upgrade card. And one of the things that kept Legion fresh, besides, you know, the like constant new releases, was that with each new release, even if it wasn't something for your faction, it was like, whoa, what new things are going to come out with this release that I could potentially use, even if I don't plan on playing Palpatine or Han or whatever.
Yoda came out. Burst of speed makes Vader better, right? Like,
yep,
you know,
exactly.
And, yeah, I definitely think in like particularly in like the Force user category, like Force upgrades are huge, you know, like and they always have been in the repertoire of Force upgrades that we've seen has, shifted the game pretty dramatically every time somebody's figured out a new force upgrade. I mean, burst of speed, barrier, push, like, yeah, no, I agree.
Even like training and command upgrades, situational awareness, hunter, offensive push, which I think probably should just still be at 4 points. But like these are all upgrades that when they came out, everybody had one, if not multiple units that they were already using that were like, hey, that would be really interesting. I want to try that. Whereas now it's like, Inquisitors are releasing next month. And unless you're an Umpire player, you're like, okay, whatever.
Your new force upgrade is the Inquisitorious training, which you can only take on those units, right?
Yeah. So I think those two factors are worth citing when in the context of people saying that Legion is stale. And releasing new things is not a 2.0. So, if that's I'm not saying that's the cause,
Sure,
but it certainly could be a cause, right? So
I definitely think the release cadence. I personally don't mind the release cadence. I think that that's fine. If I had my way, I think what I would like is a quicker cadence of adjustments as opposed to like I don't really care that much about releases. Don't get me wrong. I just bought a bunch of Geonosians. I'm having a ton of fun. Frustrating fun, I might put it as. And like I'm enjoying it. Ewoks weren't really for me, but like I get that like that would have gotten other people
They're fun.
in the same way, right? And so like I don't know. I mean, I think your point about the neutral upgrades is really important in that, I don't think the release cadence has changed that much. Like we effectively got like 3 or 4 new armies since Adepticon last year. We got
I mean, battle forces are a part of the conversation there.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Like we've got Tempest Force, Bright Tree, Wookiee Defenders, experimental droids. I'm gonna lump Geonosians into kind of that category. I know they don't have a battle force, but like as
Right.
far as like a release goes, like they got a bunch of stuff, right? But I think normally what would happen before AMG took over was like we would get, a bunch of new stuff and everybody would get a little something on the side. And now, if you're not playing that one thing or don't intend to play that one thing, that release meant nothing to you.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
Like it just didn't affect you at all.
And if you're looking at like 4 to 6 releases a year, that's maybe like one release a year that actually affects you. That's not great. I mean, it's not like Armada bad, but it's not great.
Well, I mean, like
womp womp.
as someone who plays like Republic mainline, and I have every faction, so this is like less of an issue for me.
Yeah.
But I hear this a lot from people that do play Republic. They're like, we only got Cody this year, and I'm like, well, I mean, you got Cody, you got Boyle, you got Waxer. Waxer's whatever, he doesn't do
Right.
anything.
Yeah.
But like the Wookiee Defenders is a Republic battle force, but it's not, right? It's
a Wookiee battle force.
It is, you have to buy an entirely new army to play that list,
Yep.
right? Like it's not like you can take your Republic army and be like, I'm just gonna play Wookiees today. It's like, no, you need to go out and buy like 7 boxes of Wookiees or whatever. So I think that's also a contributing factor in that like a lot of the releases that we've had previously have also not only been neutral, but a commander upgrade. We got like 4 or 5 commander upgrade, but maybe 4 or 5's high. I'll walk that back. 2 or 3 command / operative packs, like for each faction every year.
Yep.
Right. Like you got 2 or 3 new characters each year, and characters are easy. You just pull one out and throw one in for the most part. Obviously, when you're talking about competitive lists, things get a little wonky sometimes, and it's not exactly what for one. But like when you're just trying fresh new stuff, trading characters is very easy. And where are the characters? That's my question. You know?
Yeah, and characters kind of facilitate what I like to think of as tinkering,
Yep.
which means you kind of take what you're already, and this is the same with neutral upgrades. You kind of take what you're already doing and you just, tweak it a little bit rather than just doing something totally new. The latter of which can also be very fun, but usually has a much higher barrier to entry. Whereas if you're just tinkering and every month or two you get a new opportunity to tinker with something, it's easier to keep it fresh that way than to just be like, well, every 6 months I gotta just get something totally new and shelf the other stuff that I was playing with. Like Geonotions, I have really been enjoying putting together and hobbying with Geonotions. But like you said, similar to the Wookiee situation with Republic, the Geonotion list that I've been running, I had literally zero of anything in that list painted, and I have a full droid army. I have 6 B2s. I
Painted,
have 6
like ready to
B1s.
go.
Yeah, they're all painted. They're ready to go. I have every droid character. And in this new list, like literally I have to paint the entire thing. I have to assemble and paint the whole list, even though it's a separatist release, which is kind of daunting, you know. So yeah, I get that.
Yeah, I think it's like, I think barrier of entry is like a good thing to talk about, because I think before you're like, oh, a special forces came out, I'm gonna buy one ISF squad and put Inferno squad on my list. I'm gonna paint 3 models and slide them in there. And I think I'm eagerly awaiting Clone Commandos and Bad Batch, because I think they're going to have that type of
Yep.
feel where you can tinker, right?
You can tinker more, yeah.
And you can do stuff. I think Bad Batch is going to be great for the game. Rebels are going to be able to buy it. Republic's going to be able to buy it. It's going to have that kind of feel where everybody's sort of getting a little bit something, right? I think it'd be really cool if there was no Empire Crosshair in there, but I'm pretty sure they're at this point that it doesn't sound like that's the thing, but I think that sort of thing, that those sorts of things are like a much better place to be than like fighting for 2.0. I feel like we're a little off topic at this point.
Well, let's bring it back,
Okay,
right, to
okay.
2.0. Again, 2.0 implying like big splashy things, right? I think you can make a big difference with small changes.
Missions.
Yeah, missions are a great example.
Yep.
So releasing more characters and neutral upgrades so people can tinker. Step one, right? And that's not a 2.0 thing. That's just doing more releases. Some of which are very small. And like, so missions, Tim, what do you mean by missions?
I think, people there's a fair bit of people saying the game's stale, and I think the word I would use right now is a little bit solved. And a lot of that comes to missions and that. Like, and then, you bring someone new into your local community, and it's like, okay, we're gonna play key positions. Here's how you play this mission, right? So sort of the optimal strategy for basically all the missions is pretty much known. It only depends a little bit on like what the armies are, who the players are, whatever. Now, do I necessarily think we need to just keep releasing mission packs? Probably not, because then you're able to like really do more and more of like pigeonholing an objective deck and making SKU lists even more powerful. I think sort of a rotation of missions, potentially a retirement of older missions to bring in newer ones, or just a rotation in general, would be very healthy for the game, and I think would add some spice to everyone's gameplay that I think a lot of us would like to see.
It's not what I thought it was.
Did you just do a
I was trying to do a little
congrats
clappy
react?
thing. Yeah. I was
I
trying
don't
to be
that's
like, yeah, clap. I don't,
there you go.
I could you imagine what it would be like if they rolled out and they're like, this year our mission pack is gonna be like War for Geonosis, and like they're like for competitive play, we're retiring all the current like objectives, conditions, and stuff, and we're giving you like a Geonosis battle pack, you know, and it's just like all the objectives are Geonosis themed. They're like, it's just like, and then like every year or 6 months or competitive season or whatever, we just like Battle Vendor one, and like, I don't know. And it rotated like that. And like it doesn't even have to be entirely new missions, right? It could be like KP with a twist, you know, or something, you know. And I think that would be really cool. And it would be a way to keep it really fresh, right? I think like, you know, we've been playing key positions for 5-6 years now.
6 years.
6 years. Of course
Yeah.
it's stale.
I
Right?
yeah, I definitely get like the core of what you're saying. I think I'd want to see them fix the existing ones first. Because they're like payload is a perfect example,
The
right?
fact that the current ones have not been fixed is uninspiring for sure.
Right, like and like that's such a low bar
Mhm.
for to improve. Again, small changes for big impact. Like payload is a really fun objective.
Yep.
And it is currently,
perhaps unique objective.
yeah, and it's currently like very difficult to justify putting in your deck because of one stupid, easily fixable reason, and that it can't move over things that it like would trip over. Um, and just give it hover one. You know, you don't have to make it like completely ignore terrain like it used to if that's like too hard to wrap your brain around. But just give it hover one. I mean, like thematically, like clearly you don't want, yeah. Um, like just give it hover one. That's it. That's all you have to do. And now you put a previously fun, very interactive, very splashy objective back into the pool of things that people are playing. And like it to get like confidence that the new mission thing would work, I'd want to see those small changes to the existing ones first, because there are some like the payload one that are such no-brainers. You know, VAPS is another one that doesn't get played often and people think is boring. Make it so that you have to place your VAPS within range 2 of your opponent's deployment zone instead of like basically anywhere. And then you don't have safe VAPs. That's it, right? You don't have to make like a 5th VAP and invalidate the people that like to use their 4 plastic VAPs or whatever. We don't need another like fight over the center objective anyway. Just make it so that when you place the VAPs, you got to place them closer to your deployment, within range 2 of your opponent's deployment. That's it. Boom, done. Suddenly it's like a fun interactive objective again.
Yep.
And you know, I think there are lots of things you could do along those lines. KP, make it just progressive scoring. So it's not like a turn 6 rush to the middle. Make it so you got to put the secondary objectives in less safe places, similar to VAPs. You know, excuse me. So I think some small tweaks to the existing missions would go a long way in that regard. And I don't know that like I think some new missions would be good. I think you do have to be careful with that too, because if you know, because of how core they are to the gameplay, if you get a new mission that's like old original KP, suddenly you have a situation where you've got a very unfun experience. And there's a lot of potential room for error in new missions like that. So I'm not opposed to them like in an ideal situation where the new missions are great, right? But you know, anytime you release something new, you get like a, I know we just advocated for more releases, but missions in particular are something that affect like every single game that every single Legion player plays. And that's an area where I think you have to be like extra thorough in making sure that what you're doing is creating a fun experience, a fun and competitive experience for both players. So there's definitely like less. It's like the development version of playing Geonosians, right? You make one mistake and suddenly they're gone.
They just evaporate. They're just boom.
Just
yeah.
Gone. So yeah. But again, even like what you guys talked about, making a mission rotation or throwing new missions in there or whatever, that doesn't strike me as like a 2.0 kind of thing either. Right?
No, it's just, you know, it's like
it's just new stuff.
it doesn't even need to be new stuff. I mean, like we could take what the battle cards we have now and put it on a rotating system, or we
Yeah.
don't necessarily need to, but like, um, if all of a sudden, you know, every battle deck could only pick 4 out of 5 cards instead of 4 out of 8, all of a sudden things change a little bit, right? And things get tweaked.
Sort of, maybe. I think that could actually make it worse.
It
Because
definitely could. I'm not suggesting that
yeah,
specific
because right now we're
example
kind of
is
in
what
like
we
a
should be gunning for.
6 out of 8 situation.
Yeah.
And that's something that has moved this in the direction of people being like, oh, the missions are still. It's like, well, because you cut 2 of them
Right.
from the pool of things that people play.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's another thing that would like, I think could possibly make it worse rather than better.
That was an example as opposed to.
Sure, I know.
Yeah,
I'm just yeah. So one of the points that Jay and Tim made is that Legion is too long.
I hear this one a lot.
I do too. Now, I know that clearly, like if you're contrasting it to skirmish games, yeah, obviously, right? Like there's only 5 models on a table in something like MCP or Shatterpoint or whatever.
Yeah.
No, I don't know how long 40K takes to play these days. Do you guys know, or like AOS? How long does a
What?
game of AOS or 40K take?
AOS standard is 3 hours and 40K standard is 0 minutes, because don't ever play that game. Anyway.
I mean, Lord of the Rings is similar time frame.
Okay.
It's somewhere in the 2 to 3 hour benchmark. And so like, yeah, I think this is a miniature war game, right? Like this is 2 to 3 hours is what you're signing up for 30 to 50 model battles, right?
Yep.
And I don't know about you guys. I mean, I've played a few games that aren't Legion. I actually think Legion's one of the quicker ones as far as like how quick you can actually move the pace of play. Like for me, whenever I'm playing like Warhammer or Lord of the Rings, the turns themselves are much slower as far as like action point to action point.
Yeah.
And in Legion, like you're rolling dice every 40 seconds.
And you're making decisions
and you're making decisions
every 1 to 2
seconds.
minutes. Yeah, probably. Yeah.
And like with a lot of the other games, it's like you're like measuring movement and like, I don't know. You do that for like 5 minutes.
Well, and
to like move your whole army.
And 40K is an easy example because that's one that everyone's familiar with. I came from 40K to Legion, and that was one of the things that struck me about Legion immediately is it felt faster. Because even though they had similar play times, right, 2 to 3 hours, in 40K, since like your opponent does their entire turn and then you do your entire turn, you could go like 45 minutes without making a decision or doing anything except rolling defense dice. Like there's a lot of time you spend in 40K just sitting there waiting for your opponent to do stuff. And the time that you spend in Legion doing that because of the alternating activations is low. And also, frankly, just because of this, like the cerebral load in Legion, where there's a lot of different Legion. This is me coming from 40K, and this is how I felt about Legion. When I fell in love with Legion, however many years ago, basically like the mechanics were extremely simple. There's not a lot of like rules text to remember. I know that we've had some rules bloat since then. But still not in a way that like you don't have to remember what all these different unit abilities do or ask your opponent like, what does that do? Everything's out on the cards. There's not that much to remember. Like if you play a reasonable number of games of Legion, you're going to have most of the stats and most of the abilities for most things memorized pretty quickly. And if you don't, it's right there on the cards, right? And because of the keyword system, like you don't need to read a bunch of text. You don't need to read walls of text to understand what things do. You're not going to be surprised generally by what things do because it's all built on the same foundation, right? But you can also, Legion has a high potential for skill expression, and that you can kind of build on that like simple mechanics, simple to learn, simple to understand, like what's going on, and kind of expand it out till there's a lot of potential because of how positioning and movement are so important in Legion. There's a lot of potential to like really like blow that out to um like actually like do really interesting and clever things, not in ways that like break the rules, but in ways that leverage the foundation that you have already. And I always appreciated that about Legion, and that it was like kind of that perfect, like simple to learn, hard to master feel. It still has that to me. I feel like the latter part has been watered down a little bit, but that's one of the things that I loved about Legion. And I'd rather see them build on rather than break down. Does that make sense?
Yeah, or burn it down and start from scratch, right? Which, is what a 2.0 would probably look like. I mean, like every time like Warhammer has a core rules update, like some pretty intrinsic things change.
Yeah.
Like basic how your guys move, how vehicles operate on the tabletop dramatically change from edition to edition.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know that was like sort of a tangent from the pace of play conversation, but that's a long way of saying like when you're playing Legion, at least when I'm playing Legion, my brain is constantly active.
Yep.
Because there's so much to think about, like in a good way.
Yes.
Because you're thinking about decision trees. You're not trying to remember stuff, right? You're thinking about like what am I going to do next? And then because of the alternating activations, you only get like 1 or 2 minutes to have that thought, and then you have to do something. It's like, oh, I'm up again.
Yep. And if the dice go awry or your opponent does something that you didn't expect, you immediately are like, oh, I have to change my plan. Like
Right.
immediately. Like
Yep.
there's not 10 minutes to think about it. There's you have to react in the moment. Yeah, I think to me, Legion is a very fast game. Like I do not empathize with the pace of play, time taking, and play. I guess maybe that's like a playgroup thing. I don't know.
Yeah. Or just the contrasting it with games that are not remotely similar in scale. That kind of thing. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to play an hour and a half long game, play a skirmish game. Legion is not a skirmish game.
I mean,
and it was never meant to be.
I don't know how many of you have played Shatterpoint, but Shatterpoint's not much quicker, and I'd actually argue is maybe longer. I haven't had a Shatterpoint game under 2.5 hours yet.
So. Really?
No. so I don't know. I mean, yeah. So should we talk about things that maybe maybe don't need to change in a 2.0, but probably do need to change, I guess, in more detail, and like let's talk about cover. We've talked about that a lot on this podcast.
So things that would not require a 2.0, but things that definitely could be improved.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. That aren't like that are actually sort of fundamental to the game, right? Like, I mean, I think so far everything we've hit on has been like releases will make the game less stale, and like, but I mean, the game is not without its faults, right?
Sure.
There are things that could be better within the rule set for sure.
I mean, cover is definitely the biggest one for me.
Yep.
The current cover rules are cumbersome. They're confusing, particularly when vehicles get involved. But I think with troopers too. If you don't read the forums, you're not doing cover correctly.
Yeah. The other game we were playing, and Kyle was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna shoot you with my stab," or I was shooting your stab, and like, you're like, "Do I have cover? Do I not have cover?" And I was just like, "I don't know. You have cover." I guess.
Yeah,
like we're not even gonna check. Like
we
there's
just
no
literally did not know how to resolve the situation.
yeah, it's just
And
like
I've played with bikes a lot since I played Blizzard after the CRB. So I've played a lot with bikes. And it was still one of those situations where we were like, I don't know how to proceed here. Let's just roll a dice.
it's just like it's not worth it. It's not worth going through the steps to figure it out, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, in that situation too, because you're talking about like 50% obscured from an infinite number of points, it's not that like we don't know what the steps are. It's that there was no way to actually implement the steps in a way that resulted in some kind of outcome that was
yeah,
determinable.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's never a good situation.
Just like sure, you could have to become Kyle.
Right. Yeah. And then they did 3 wounds to Yoda.
Yeah, yeah. As is normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think cover is the big one. You know, we talked about the payload change, right? I think for me, it is a lot of nuancy stuff, right? Stuff like the overrun changes, which uh, like I think we need to tighten the ship up, right?
Yeah.
We
Plug up
need
some of the holes, fill the cracks.
tighten the ship up, you know, plug the holes. I think one of the nice things that we had under the previous RRG was that it was pretty clear when a hole wasn't plugged how you could go about. You just added a new entry to the RRG.
Add another bullet.
Add another bullet.
Yeah.
Easy peasy. Lemon
Or change
squeezy.
the language in the existing bullet.
Yeah. And it was, it's just an edit to a PDF. And I'm not saying that it's not quite that now, but like, you know, uh all the edits are basically made on the forums. You gotta go hunting for them. You gotta hope you use the right keywords when you're searching. Like um and and it feels like the holes are not getting plugged in the way that they used to be.
There's a lot of pretty critical rulings slash clarification slash really rule changes that sit on the forums for a long time that, for those who are not necessarily in the know, don't exist. And then it leads to arguments
Yeah.
because there's people who basically have one rule and then there's other people who have a different rule. And yeah.
There's I forget who said this. I feel like it's like I don't know if it's famous or I'm making that up, but like when you like know something to be true and then you like bring it into like a public place and start like spouting out that thing you think it to be true, or you go to play a game and you think you know a rule and somebody at the table like corrects you, it's just like the worst feeling in the world. It's not even like because like a lot of times you'll be so sure because like within your little group or whatever you'll been playing it right, and then all of a sudden you learn that you've been playing it wrong for the last 6 months to a year, and like I don't know, it feels like you're getting exposed or something. It's not a good feeling.
Yeah, it's just very like you get defensive.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's weird to say that it's part of like it's part of your Legion gaming identity, how you play the game, right? So when you run up against a situation where someone's like, that's not how that works, this defense mechanism in your brain kicks off where it's like, but if that's not how that works, then I've been doing this wrong the whole time.
What else have I been
Right. Yeah.
doing? Right? Like
Yeah. So yes, there could be better maintenance, maybe is the right word,
yeah.
to avoid those kind of situations. Um, catching the situations that are unintuitive or where there's loopholes or where there's weird language and like just tightening them up. And that's kind of like keeping a room clean, right? The more often you do it, the easier it is. And if you wait, I mean, my kids with their room, my two oldest are in the same room, and it is constantly a disaster. It's the reason that it's like that way is because it has been that way, and once it reaches that point, it's like much harder to fix. Like there have been time periods where it's been clean, and it's been one of those situations where it's like, all right, let's just pick up the 4 or 5 things that are on the floor every day.
Yep.
And then it stays that way.
You know what
But
is
if
the answer though?
what's that?
Buying a new room.
Right, exactly. Yes.
Like
Just demolishing it, going in there with a garbage bag and throwing all the toys and stuff in a garbage bag and putting them on the curb. My kids would murder me in my sleep.
Yeah.
The room would be a lot cleaner though.
Sure. Sure. The kids would be pissed.
Yeah.
But perhaps more importantly, like buying a new room in the example, or getting a new room, like it doesn't prevent the new room from being
Getting messy.
more or less
Yeah.
dirty. Like as soon as it gets messy and you don't pick it up again, like here we are, right? Like
Right.
So like yeah, I think I like that analogy.
Yeah.
Do your kids pick up after themselves well?
No. They've been better about it. We started implementing an allowance system where they have to
Ooh.
pick up after themselves.
Ooh,
My daughter
bribery.
in particular is very money motivated. She loves to buy stuff. So,
Bribery. Yay.
bribery. Yep. It's I mean, it's only like $5 a week, so it's not like it's breaking the bank. But $5 to a 7-year-old is like
That's
like a fortune. Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
That's like 5 pieces of candy.
Totally.
Or something from the dollar store or whatever. Which to them is like, it's game changing.
Yeah.
So yes, that has helped. And we did go in there one weekend and like we did a good, it took about 2 hours, but we did a good like thorough clean of the room. And now that we've done that, it's frankly much easier to keep that way.
Yep.
So yeah, plug in the cracks, fill in the holes, keeping them that way on an ongoing basis. And I feel like there's a lot of things that have been just kind of going unaddressed for long periods of time. And that stuff accumulates over time and adds up. It might be like each individual thing taken by itself is like, whatever, that's not a big deal. How many people play lead from the front anyway, right?
Just me.
Right. Yeah. Who cares if the language on that one is within instead of at, like every other command card? But when that happens 10 to 15 times with other things, and like it adds up, so
Yeah. And the amount of time that it's left that way, like
right.
Like fix payload, please. Like
Right.
like, yeah. I feel like that ended up more negative than I wanted it to be, but
Well, let's frame it in a positive way,
sure.
because I think we have been focusing on things that have not been happening. So maybe we can like things that we would like to see happen that, again, small things, big impact, things that would not be a lot of effort, A, and would have a big positive impact, B. And like the steps, so the steps to take those are to look at the loopholes, look at the cracks, look at the things that where something is obviously written wrong, and just start cleaning those up and fixing them. And then just keep doing that.
And they're able to do it because they did with darks.
They did.
You did.
Yep.
Yeah, 100%. Like it yeah, it seems like a bandwidth thing, if anything, right? Like but I like a lot of the places that we've gone to be honest. Like battle forces have been a pretty big change.
Yep.
Right.
The pass rule is great.
Pass rule, applaud. I'd love to see you being able to pass in deployment too. That's just my personal, that's but I guess my point being that like you can take the good things and continue to riff them, right?
Yep, exactly.
And like you can continue to expand on them. I think the pass mechanic made a lot of things that were previously not good enough They see the table now, which is fantastic.
Well, and the pass mechanic, I think, is a perfect example to this point that you're trying to make, which is that they could have, instead of doing what they did, which was a very like limited, nuanced, one pass a turn if you're down on activations kind of a thing. What they could have done was done something like what MCP's pass rule is, which is anytime your opponent can do more things than you just pass. And it's like an unlimited pass, basically,
Oh,
right?
wow. Yeah.
They could have done that for Legion, and I think that would have been a disaster.
It would have ruined some units. Yeah.
For sure. In a way that like really upset what the foundation of Legion was. But instead, they took a much more nuanced approach, and they made the pass rule that we currently have, and I think it's great.
Yep.
Small change, big impact. So, and I think the climb stuff is a little bit more debatable where that falls, but I also like the climb changes.
It definitely makes terrain more playable. We see a bigger variety of playable terrain because of it.
Yep.
I have come around is how
there are some things that I think maybe this is maybe more pointed than like, being able to pass in deployment, but like scale probably still needs to get
a little
fixed,
update.
Like there are keywords that really depended on how the climbing rules used to work that don't really do anything anymore. I mean, they do kind of things, but not that I think the Wookiee battle force needs scale anymore. To be fair, because
Old
they
scale.
don't.
Yeah.
Yes.
that'd be so much fun.
Fun. Yes, that one. But I mean, I think those keywords could get another look. But again, those are just things that like are quick, easy edits, right?
Yep. The broader point is, at least just speaking for myself, I love what Legion is at its core. I love what its foundation is. I'm still having fun. And I would personally much rather see that built on than torn down.
Amen.
Amen indeed. I guess it's like may the force be with you, but that sounds like we're ending. Are we ending?
I think this could be a good spot to end, actually.
Okay.
Unless you have any further thoughts on, are there any more like broad points that Jay and Tim made that
I think the biggest one that we
pressing?
haven't really talked about is like older units seeing some love. But again, I think that falls in the category of
like balance updates.
Yeah. We just need to see balance updates.
I also think we talked in our generic upgrade talk about one of the problems that I think older units are feeling right now is that they haven't been touched by generic upgrades in a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. All of a sudden, like there's like a new gear upgrade that like stormtroopers can take. Maybe they feel good again,
or at least different.
Yeah, absolutely. I also think people just don't take enough stormtroopers generally. They're
I
really
agree
cheap.
with that.
They're really
Stormtroopers
cheap.
are fine. Yeah.
For a core unit, they're pretty efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. We talked about this, I think, on the Empire episode, but people should be taking more stormtroopers.
Yeah. Yeah. Rebels, I can get behind the like rebel troopers maybe need a little love, but that's a different thing.
Yep. All right. Well, any final thoughts?
Play Legion. Have fun with the game. Don't we're here to have fun. And win. We're also here to win, just to be clear.
Yeah.
But
this is a competitive podcast,
Yeah,
competitive focus podcast. Yeah.
Really? What?
Find the fun. For me, the winning is the fun part. Doesn't need to be for everybody, but like, I think this is an amazing game. We're all here because of I mean, maybe not strictly, but like the rules set that if you're listening to this podcast, you're playing Legion because A, you probably like Star Wars, and B, the rules set that it's built on are A+ foundation. Let's not rip them down.
Yeah, I played 40K for 25 years before I played Legion.
Oh, it's about 24 and a half too long.
Yeah. Anyway, my point is like my brand loyalty to 40K was high when Legion came out, and I tried Legion. I have played 0 games of 40K since. Um, if that tells you anything about how much of a game changer it was for me, like, and don't get me wrong, I am a Star Wars fan, but I'm also like a 40K GW aesthetic / lore fan, possibly more than I'm a Star Wars fan. So that was not
Man,
like
your
the
name
reason.
is Orchimedes.
My name is Orchimedes, who may actually be getting a model. I don't want to go on this tangent, but they have previewed, they have teased at Adepticon that there's like a new mech model, and I'm hoping, because he's never had a model. Um, I'm hoping he gets one, and I think that I will have to buy it and paint it, even though I don't play 40K anymore. um, yeah, my point is, it was the rules, it was the gameplay, um, it was it was the game of Legion and not Star Wars that brought me to Legion. And I know the same is true of a lot of like X40K players that play or have played Legion. Um, so yeah, I love it. I'd rather see it built upon.
The refugees.
Yeah, 40K refugees. Now, being better than 40K is not like a high bar. Don't get me
No.
wrong. But like I really appreciate what Legion is, as far like it really scratches that itch for me. Uh, it's just foundationally, it's a great game. All right. Well, we are the Notorious Scoundrels. We don't need a Legion 2.0. I'm Kyle.
I'm Mike.
I'm Timbo.
Stay fresh, cheese bags.